What if I told you that the Ents are the second most dangerous tree in Middle Earth? Well, if they really are a tree. That there is another kind of tree that Treebeard is even kind of afraid of. I mean, I'm from America, and I gotta say, if the redwoods ever got infused with some draft by the elves and were woken up, the rest of the world better take notice. But for Middle Earth, at least, Ents talk about how there is another kind of tree being that is more dangerous than them and more wild. And they are living right in their own forest of Fangorn. And what the book says about them is pretty terrifying. But before I go on, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I am reading Lord of the Rings for the first time and publishing my thoughts in the form of video essays, and I've got tons of them on the channel, so you can catch up if you want. You can also become a member for some members-only content and early access to videos too. It's a great way to support the channel, and you can read along with me as I read Lord of the Rings and some other books as well, as I do some stuff like Brandon Sanderson, Game of Thrones, Narnia, Harry Potter, and the rest of those good books. But back to trees, because if I keep talking about books, Treebeard will be very angry. But his anger doesn't scare me as much as the anger of the Huorns. I still don't even fully understand them, if I'm being honest, because they're more tree-like than the Ents, but the Ents are very tree-like already. But the book also kind of paints them as more like tree-ish rather than trees. They have skin rather than bark, although their skin is bark-like. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole again because I made a whole different video talking about Tolkien's description of Ents, which was a wild ride. But the book describes these creatures in this way. We came down over the ridge into Non-Kreen after night had fallen, Mary continued. It was then that I first had the feeling that the forest itself was moving behind us. I thought I was dreaming an Entish dream, but Pippin had noticed it too. We were both frightened, but we did not find out more about it until later. It was the Huorns, or so the Ents called them in short language. Treebeard won't say much about them, but I think they are Ents that have become almost like trees, at least to look at. They stand here and there in the wood or under the eaves, silent, watching endless over the trees. But deep in the darkest dales, there are hundreds and hundreds of them, I believe. There is a great power in them, and they seem to be able to wrap themselves in shadow. It is difficult to see them moving, but they do. They can move very quickly if they are angry. You stand still, looking at the weather maybe, or listening to the rustling of the wind, and then suddenly you find that you are in the middle of a wood, with great groping trees all around you. They still have voices, and can speak with the Ents. That is why they are called Huorns, Treebeard says. But they have become queer and wild. Dangerous. I should be terrified of meeting them if there were no true Ents about to look after them. First off, Treebeard not saying much about them is terrifying to me. This is maybe someone who loves talking. I mean, he doesn't really like giving off too much information, so perhaps he's actually protecting them from maybe like potential deforestation, and he's just kind of preserving their secret or something like that. He doesn't seem like a fully trusting person, so maybe that's the case, but Treebeard seems a bit nervous of these things. There is great power in them too. They wrap themselves in shadows. Terrifying description. They have voices and they can talk, but they have become queer and wild. And don't worry, I'm not going to make a joke essay about the old versus the new reading of that word. But they are dangerous creatures. And it's vitally important too, because this section of the movie never made sense to me, if I'm honest. Like, there is a battlefield that Aragorn looks out on over Helm's Deep. But then after the Battle of Helm's Deep, when the orcs go running away, they run into the forest. Where was that forest before? And the book gives its answer. But the extended edition also kind of gives an answer to that too, but not quite as clear. But those were the Huorns, and they had an orc killing obsession, and they traveled hundreds of miles to get to Helm's Deep because of it. And on top of that, the whole siege of Isengard is just so different from the movie. In the film, it happens in like 25 minutes tops. The Ents get to Isengard and they kill a few orcs. They release the river, and that's that. Maybe even less. If they sped run that, it would probably take like 5 minutes tops. But in the book, the siege lasts for a while. Almost a full day, if I remember correctly. And the Ents were slow. If you kind of count the night before, the Ents had encircled the city of Isengard very slowly before they even attacked too. Then when the orcs left, the Huorns got distracted, and most of them seemed to follow the orcs south. But then the book describes the first move here. They, being the orcs, were all singing with harsh voices and laughing, making a hideous din. I thought things looked very black for Rohan, but Treebeard did not move. He said, "My business is with Isengard tonight, with rock and stone." But I thought I could not see what was happening in the dark. I believe that Huorns began moving south as soon as the gates were shut. Their business was with orcs, I think. They were far down the valley in the morning, or at any rate there was a shadow there that one couldn't see through. As soon as Saruman had sent off all his army, our turn came. Treebeard put us down and went up to the gates and began hammering on the doors and calling for Saruman. There was no answer, except arrows and stones from the walls. But arrows are no use against Ents. They hurt them, of course, and infuriate them like stinging flies. But an Ent can be stuck as full of orc arrows as a pincushion and take no serious harm. They cannot be poisoned, for one thing, and their skins seem to be very thick and tougher than bark. It takes a very heavy axe stroke to wound them seriously. They don't like axes, but there would have to be a great many axemen to one Ent. A man that hacks once at an Ent never gets a chance of a second blow. A punch from an Ent fist crumples up iron like thin air. When Treebeard had got a few arrows in him, he began to warm up, to get positively hasty, as he would say. He let out a great whoom whoom, and a dozen more Ents came striding up. An angry Ent is terrifying. Their fingers and their toes just freeze onto the rock, and they tear it up like bread crusts. It was like watching the work of great tree roots in 100 years, all packed into a few moments. They pushed, pulled, tore, shook, and hammered. In clang, bang, crash, crack, in 5 minutes they had these huge gates just lying in ruins, and some were already beginning to eat into the walls, like rabbits in a sand pit. I don't know what Saruman thought was happening, but anyway, he did not know how to deal with it. His wizardry may have been falling off lately, of course, but anyway, I think he has not much grit. Not much plain courage alone in a tight place without a lot of slaves and machines and things, if you know what I mean. Very different from old Gandalf. I wonder if his fame was not all along mainly due to his cleverness in settling at Isengard. So, to me, that almost signals that the Ents' way of destroying Isengard was actually to destroy the stone itself. That seems significantly more permanent, but then Saruman runs away into his tower in this book and then cooks up some devilry and ignites the stoves under them to attempt to burn them, so they retreat. And then Treebeard sets out with some Huorns and they dig pools of water all night. Then they release the dam and flood Isengard and lay siege to it, but they cannot destroy the Tower of Orthanc with their roots and their way of destruction. It's too smooth and too hard. And Gandalf even swings by on his way to go pick up not Éomer but Erkenbrand. Made another whole video about that. Éomer is fighting in Helm's Deep right now. It's just so riveting in the book. And I will save that Gandalf moment for another video because it's actually hilarious, but the whole siege was much longer and more intense in the book. And these Huorn creatures seem terrifying to me. Much more in numbers than the Ents, and much more unpredictable and angry. But the Huorns are definitely one of the more interesting parts of the book so far. And if you haven't read the books, you should definitely read them and follow along with my essays. If you have read the books and you want to experience this like it's the first time again, then subscribe and live vicariously through me. But make sure you like the video, and I'll see you in the next one.